new podcast called Take Off with John Clark. He has interviewed guys such as Bryce Harper, Doug Peterson, big names in Philadelphia sports have talked to John Clark. His new podcast is called Take Off with John Clark. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple. You can watch the video portion of it as well. Follow John on Twitter at JClarkNBCS, and you can get a little insight on the new podcast. It's called Take Off with John Clark, and he joins us now from NBC Sports Philadelphia right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. As a lot going on as the NHL deadline today, the Sixers weekend, the Phillies had a wild weekend as well, the NFL draft. So let's get into it now with John Clark from NBC Sports Philadelphia, and the new podcast is called Take Off with John Clark. What's going on, John?
Hey, how are you doing? Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. We're doing well, and it's been a interesting time, and you started a new little venture into the podcasting world as well. Take Off with John Clark, and of course, right off the bat, as we would expect, you talked to some heavy hitters so far.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I especially during the pandemic, I listened to a lot of long-form interviews, and I really, really enjoy that format where you can kind of get into a lot of things with, a lot of people that have had a really big influence on Philly sports, whether it's coaches or players, like Doug Peterson for the first one, and then Daryl Morey and Bryce Harper. And I always like to find out what makes somebody tick and the why behind a lot of things, and then, answer questions that people want answers to. So, I love the format. I mean, you got a great format there. You can talk to the people all day and get real honest opinions. So I'm excited to jump into this.
Yeah, and I know each guy, that you talk to all have an interesting story. Like, you got a chance to talk to Doug Peterson, but also his son at the same time. But when you talk to Doug, did you feel like you're talking to a guy that was like exhaling from getting out of a situation that maybe he just was tired of being in? Like, what was your talking to Doug? What kind of impression did you get about where he is? Is he at peace with no longer being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I do believe him when he says he is at peace, and he looks so refreshed living in Florida with his family and getting a lot of time for himself and his family. I really think that this past year was the toughest of his football life. He got COVID, and then the season just completely unraveled, and so many things went wrong, and it became a huge mess. And so I do think that he wants to be a head coach again, but I do think that the situation just didn't work out for both the Eagles and Doug. And, he wanted to be able to choose his own coaches, and he wanted to have more influence over the things he does. And the Eagles made a decision that they wanted maybe some other coaches and some other innovative ideas to come in, and they just couldn't come together on it. So I see both sides of it. But I do think Doug is really refreshed, and I think we'll see if he gets another head coaching opportunity next year, but he does want to get back in.
Yeah, John Clark's our guest. The podcast is called Take Off with John Clark. Follow him on Twitter at JClark. NBCS, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you can get the alert, because he gets the big names as always, and one of them is Bryce Harper, who obviously is now into his third season here. But I thought they said something on the broadcast last night that talked about how Bryce has really, embraced everything that the organization has asked him to do. And when he first got in the league, he may have been a little bit more sheltered. He didn't want to talk. Last night, he's the guy that's being interviewed while he's in the on-deck circle. So talking to Bryce Harper for your sit-down with him, what was something that really stood out about Bryce's personality and why he has kind of fit into Philadelphia? When some people were is he going to fit in here? He doesn't have that kind of personality. It seems that his personality has changed with being here.
Well, I think he does fit Philly's personality. And the one thing that I did ask him, I said, Bryce, shoot me straight. It's almost like you have a really good marketing person that helps you come up with all these things, the connection to the Fanatic and wearing the Fanatic shoes, and then the clear Wooder shirt, and all these things. And he always seems to say the right thing and talking about Philly history. And he said, no, that is just stuff that I want to do and I like to do. And it just comes up and I feel like doing it. And he says, I'm not going to do something else that somebody else wants me to do. It comes from me. So I thought that was really cool. And just from talking to people that talk to him, he really, honestly, genuinely loves Philly. He loves living here. He loves the organization. And he really wants to help bring this city a parade again. And that is genuine. I really think that the way he plays, I mean, you've seen, those plays where there's a foul ball and maybe you don't want him almost running into the side wall out there or sliding into it. He's all in 100%. Reminds me a little bit of Pete Rose, the way he plays the game, and he swings violently. So he's all in. And I mean, if you look back, you think about it, he signed a 13-year contract with no out clauses, no trade. He wanted to be here for the duration, and his kids are going to be raised here. Both of them only know him as a Philly. So it is genuine, the love that Bryce does have for this city.
John Clark, Take Off with John Clark. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, the whole nine. He's got great ones. He's got Doug and Josh Peterson started it off. Coming to America actor and comedian Michael Blackson was an excellent one on his return to Philly. You can go back and listen to that from March. Jalen Mills, we'll get into the Eagles in a second, but I want to ask you about your conversation with Daryl Morey, because he's another guy that feels like he has embraced the Sixers fans and he engages with them. I mean, this is a guy that, if you talk to him from afar, you might say, he's a little quirky or whatever, but the more you sit down and the more you peel the onion from Daryl Morey, it seems like he was perfect for this job.
Yeah, look, he's highly intelligent, and he look, him and Sam Hinkie, they really brought analytics to the NBA. They really did. And, I think he is heavy into analytics, but he also understands, like a guy like Doc Rivers and what Doc can do with good coaching. We've seen that with Tobias Harris and such. So I look, it's fascinating because Daryl Morey had all those years with the Rockets, and he couldn't get over the hump and beat one of the greatest teams assembled, the Golden State Warriors. So I remember when I first sat down with him when he was hired here, he legitimately thought he was going to take a year off, and Sixers went after him quickly and right away when he was leaving the Rockets. And believe me, they paid him a lot of money, but he saw Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and he says, you know what? I think I can win with these guys. And he badly wants to win his first NBA title. So I think you've got the perfect mix with the Sixers with Daryl and Doc, and then young stars, and they're going to make sure they get it done someday. I truly believe that the Sixers, and I believe they have the best chance out of any of the teams in the city of winning a championship during this time with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I think it will happen. Don't know if it's next year, this year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but I think it will happen.
Well, John, if we were having this conversation about this time last year, we would say maybe it's the Flyers who have the best shot to win. I mean, the goalie, I said, I want to get your opinion on this because obviously you've been covering all the teams for so long. Claude Giroux has been here for 14 years. Do you find it fascinating? I know he has a no-trade clause, but have they ever approached him ever and said, hey, it's 10 years, it's 12 years, it's 14 years. Would you want us to explore? I feel like no rumors, nothing's ever got out about them talking about trading Giroux. I mean, even Allen Iverson, at one point, the fans said, all right, it's time. Andy Reid, okay, it's time. Claude Giroux feels like it's never even been discussed.
Yeah, you're right. You've never heard him mentioned as a high priority for teams to either get or for the Flyers to unload him. Look, Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek, they make a lot of money. And are they ascending players at this point in their careers? Most likely not. So I don't think a team would really set out to trade for Claude Giroux or Jake Voracek. And this year, I really, it's stunning to me what's happened to this team since last year when they went to a Game 7, 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals. They were playing well, then COVID hit, and they had an outbreak on the team. They haven't been the same since. I'm not saying that is the reason, but there is something missing. It's almost like this team became fragile. The mix just isn't working. And then I think there's been a breakdown of trust between the goalie and the defense, where I don't know which started first, but obviously the goalie has not played as well. Carter Hart is having those growing pains, and then the defense obviously has not played well. And so I think that both start to do other things out of their comfort zone and try to make up for the other. And so I just think there's a trust broken there with the defense and the goalie. And then, like Alain Vigneault said yesterday, there's too many mistakes being made by our most experienced players. So it really is hard to understand, but something's going to have to be done in the offseason because something is broken with this team.
It's crazy. I mean, and to me, John, you were excited and believed about the Flyers because of Hart, not because of Claude Giroux, not because of Jake Voracek or Sean Couturier. All good players, nice players, but you really believed in them last year and were excited because they finally had the goalie. And now the goalie's not playing well, and you see what this team has become. And I think that is kind of, I don't want to say an indictment on Giroux, but that's why I thought maybe Chuck Fletcher would have today tried to say, you know what, it's time to shake this thing up because, quite frankly, I think we know the results of this if you keep these guys. And he's got one more year left on the deal. Voracek's got a couple. I'm just surprised that we've never heard anything in regard to trying to move him over the last, 3 to 5 years. I think that is one of the more interesting stories in the city. And then, of course, John, there's the Eagles, who are always on the front page of everything. You talked to Jalen Mills. He went to New England, but there seems like there's so much turmoil over there. But I want to ask you this. They went 4-12 with Andy. Andy left. They brought Chip Kelly in. The next year they won 10 games. Does this team feel like it can be similar to that, or do you think we're in the middle or the start of a bad period of Eagles football?
Well, I think it's going to be more like what happened after Chip Kelly left and Howie Roseman had to undo Chip's disastrous personnel moves. I think this is going to be a really down year. You want to have some hope, and I do have some hope because they have the easiest schedule in the NFL coming up this year. They don't play a team on the road that had a winning record last year. So they do have an easier schedule than they had last year. And to me, I think it is going to be a down year, but I think this year is all about finding out if Jalen Hurts can be your quarterback going forward. And when I interviewed NFL draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah for the podcast this past week, he made a really good point that he believes the whole reason they traded from 6 to 12 was to get the extra draft pick for next year, the first-round pick, as insurance for Jalen Hurts, that they're not completely sold on him, and they don't know what they completely have with Jalen Hurts. So what they want to do is they want to have that availability next year and optionality, as Sam Hinkie and Daryl Morey have said, where you have those possible 3 first-round picks next year, and you can go up and get one of the top quarterbacks that's going to come out or trade for a Russell Wilson. So I do think that this is all about finding out if Jalen Hurts can be the guy. And I don't think I know. I don't know who does know. But I want to see Jalen Hurts get his chance, a full off season with the young players on offense and getting all the reps. And let's see if he can do it. And then if not, okay, then you go ahead and you go get a quarterback another way.
John Clark, NBC Sports Philadelphia. He interviews the biggest athletes, coaches, personalities on the Takeoff podcast with John Clark. Subscribe anywhere you can get your podcast. So who is your next target to appear on the Takeoff? Who are you trying to track down?
Well, working on a couple things leading up to the Eagles draft, of course. I will hopefully maybe by the end of the weekend know who our next guest or guests are. I don't want to put it out there yet,
All
but
right.
working on something pretty good. And it relates to a game that's coming up. But, look, I think podcasts are a great format where you can have a little bit more relaxed conversation with the athlete or the coach and get a little deeper about stuff. And they open up a little bit when it's kind of a long form interview. So it's an exciting thing. And look, I think this is an exciting time. You're going to see hopefully the Eagles rebuild their team, start to do it with the draft, and then Sixers looks like they're going to go in as one of the top 2 seeds to the playoffs, and hopefully they can make a long run. Obviously, the Flyers doesn't look like they're making the playoffs, but the Phillies, I think, they have a chance to compete all summer in this division. They may have to make a trade at the deadline to get a starting pitcher for the end of the rotation or a center fielder, but I think they can hang there and compete for most of the summer in the division.
All right. Yeah, you're right. It's a very interesting time in Philly, and obviously check out the podcast, subscribe wherever to get your podcast. Follow John on Twitter at JClarkNBCS for more. And John, we appreciate your time, man. Good to catch up.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on, and I actually can't wait to get back down the shore. Memorial Day weekend is coming soon, and that is one of the best weekends of the year when you start to smell the bay again, driving into the shore towns. I mean, there's nothing better.
Nothing better. That's why we stay here. We don't like going up to Philly. It's too hot up there. Come on down anytime you want, John.
You're lucky. You're lucky.
All right, brother. Take care. John Clark, NBC Sports Philadelphia. And again, the podcast is called Take Off with John Clark. It's really good.